Inefrasi. Ginemastakula gihanasoku. Imastaculum gi corazonhu. Zani masfigu naninya senyahu. Hua frasim maisadzu. Parabai protehi zanhu defendi. Ihenengi.
Ihenengi.
Ikotura.
Ikutura.
LINGUA'HI.
LINGUA'HI.
Airi.
Airi.
Hanum.
Hanum. Sanitano Chamorro.
Shaku, Teretsu, Ginazua Stata. Estio Fitma, Kihilu Biblia. Zani Benderahu. Ibenderan, Guahan.
Half a day, and thank you for tuning in to this year's annual celebration of Hestorian Isla. I am Jolene Tovis, and I am your host. In this episode, Polly Eric Forbes will return again with his annual Chamorro Word of the Week, and Senora Rita NAUTA of Guampedia.com will give us a sneak peek at their new book, FAMALAO'AN, GUAHAN, Woman in Guam's History. This year's weekly series will take a look at the Chamorro language through the Guam Department of Education's Chamorro Studies Division. We are taking you into the Chamorro classroom this year, so stay right there. Welcome back to Hestorian Isla. I'm Jolene Tovis, your host, and this year is an exciting year for Guampedia.com and for Guam. Why, you ask? Well, just last month they released a new book that focuses on women in Guam's history. In a second, Senora NAUTA will share the story of a woman in Guam's history in our island's ancient times. Let's take a listen.
Women can you name that have helped to shape Guam's history? Agata Glacius Johnston, Clotilde Castro Gould, Cecilia Cruz Bamba. These are just a few of the women in Guam history featured in Guampedia's newest book, FAMALAO'AN GUAHAN, Women in Guam History. Hafa Day, Guahu si Rita Pangolina Nauta, Familingalaidi, Diaz and Kotla, from the village of Santa Rita and ancestral village of Sumai. I'm also part of Guampedia.com's team that gives you and the online global community an educational resource about Guam's unique history and the culture of the Marianas. Guampedia is an affiliate program of UOG's Micronesian Area Resource Center. We're excited to share with you our newest book focused on FAMALAO'AN. Several years ago, there were very few stories of women compared to the number of stories about men featured in the Guampedia website. We recognize the need for a more balanced presentation of people that have helped shape our history, not to mention the fact that women comprise half of Guahan's population today. We now have stories of 28 amazing women accessible through our website and our new book. In this episode, we take a look at women in Guahan's ancient times, Ginin y Mañaynata. Archaeological evidence indicates the Mariana Islands were one of the first places to be settled by seafaring peoples, probably from island Southeast Asia at least 3,500 years ago. They were one of the first in the history of mankind to make an open ocean voyage. Without a doubt, there were women on those early voyages. Once settled, possibly in many waves over many years, They evolved into the Chamorro people with their own distinct language and way of life. As descendants of voyagers, Chamorros have always had a close relationship with the natural environment, having extensive knowledge of the vast Pacific Ocean, using the currents, wind, and celestial bodies to navigate. Our ancestors worked together with respective roles, just like on a canoe, people working together for a successful voyage, and in turn, for the good of the community and the natural environment. This is where the enduring Chamorro spirit of Anafamalik comes from. Evidence of these ancestral beliefs can be found in one of the most important oral histories of the Chamorro people, the creation myth of Fortna and Ponten. Fortna, Ponten's sister, plays a very active role in creation and is considered the Nana, or mother, of the Chamorro people. Because this creation account has been passed on through oral tradition over 150 generations, there are, quite naturally, different versions of the story. What's most important, though, is what the account tells us about our unique indigenous culture. Over 3 millennia in the Marianas Archipelago, a distinct culture evolved, Itautau. From the people that came before us, Ginini Manmofetna, men and women were both respected as powerful and contributing members of society. Gender roles were balanced so that men and women shared power and responsibility. This gender balance can also be found in the political system. In Chamorro politics, the 2 most powerful titles in ancient society were held by a male and a female, the Megatlahi, or leading son, and the Megathaga, or leading daughter. The titles demonstrate the cultural significance of brothers and sisters, or tsetlus, which highlights another important Chamorro cultural lesson. The unique brother-sister relationship between Fortna and Ponten reflects the matrilineal system that was practiced by the Chamorro people. In this system, brothers and sisters relied strongly upon each other to protect family property, raise the children, and sustain the family. The Tsetlu bond was considered absolutely permanent and reliable. In our ancient Chamorro creation account, it is Fortna that brings life to the universe, that she formed from her Tsetlu's body parts. As in the matrilineal system, land and lineage is traced through the mother's line. Fortna has influenced and inspired Chamorro women and society throughout history by the values that her story embodies. Fortna's legacy today lives in the people, land, water, and air in the Mariana Islands. For this reason, Fortna is given the gratitude and reference as Nana, or mother of the Chamorro people. But remember, she didn't do it alone. Biba Tautotanu, Biba Marianas, Donkulu Nasisus Maasi.
Thank you, Senora NAUTA, for sharing that great story of our island's history. Tune in again next Monday for a look at our leading women in the Spanish era. Earlier, when the show started, I mentioned we'll be taking you into the island's Department of Education Chamorro classroom to take a look at how our children in the public school system are learning our precious Chamorro language. Buenas Hafade, Guahusi Jolene Toves, and welcome to Historian Islata. I'm here at JQ San Miguel with 4th grade Chamorro teacher, Senora Melissa Camacho. Welcome.
Buenas.
We're here today to talk about the Chamorro language, an introduction to the Chamorro language, and how our youth are introduced to our language. Can you share with us, how do you go about teaching our students who are first-time learners of the Chamorro language?
Okay, for me, Chamorro shouldn't only be something that's contained in the classroom. For me, I believe that in any language, application is important. So for my students, meaningful learning is key for me. And for a language class, of course, and in any second language class, vocabulary and knowing and understanding what vocabulary is, of course, is important. But for me, I believe it's important to scaffold and build upon vocabulary and also extending and making it meaningful. And so one of the strategies that I do use, of course, is letting students understand, of course, what the word means, but being also able to apply it to real life application.
Yes, yes. I remember when I was first learning the Chamorro language back in elementary many, many years ago. It was really about memorization.
Right.
Can you share with us how today's Chamorro language is taught differently from years ago?
Right, okay, so with the history, of course, there's been development with orthography and grammar, grammatical rules, right? So now we have, I would say now there's a more solid foundation as far as sentence structures and how to, and of course, as teachers, we undergo a lot of different trainings to utilize different strategies. For me, again, one of the main strategies that I use, of course, is called TPR, which is Total Physical Response. And this is key for me because I feel that the total physical response approach allows a student to be engaged, fully engaged, which leads to the second strategy, which is immersion. And so once we get them engaged fully, physically, you're able, that's an easy access for you to be able to utilize immersion and the language.
Well, learning any new language can be difficult. How do you make it fun for our island's youth? I mean, they are really young, and so of course their attention span is a little bit shorter and can be distracted easily. So how do you maintain their attention and make it fun?
Okay, so for me, a lot of activities, a lot of singing, of course, movement, games, like I said, and of course it has to begin with the teacher. So for me, I love to make my class enjoyable and fun, and of course providing the right materials for them in order to learn.
All right.
And retain.
I found it very amazing that when we walked into this classroom, I didn't hear any English coming out of your mouth. It was strictly Chamorro. How easy was it or difficult was it to get them to this point where you can just speak in Chamorro and they understand?
Of course, as I said before, the scaffold method and visuals are very important for these students. And drill and practice, of course, but being also to make it real, make it applicable to your life. I could give a student a pencil now. Before, I'm going to say maybe 5 years ago, they would just say, "Oh, Senora Lapis," but now they're able to apply and make it meaningful. Senora Camacho, who necesita y lapis? Senora Camacho, cocina manuli zo lapis. Sinya man describi loqui, colora gaga estina lapis. So things that are applicable to real life, which makes it more meaningful.
So do you use like examples of different types of Chamorro words and move that to actual hard, tangible items? Like, do you bring in, like, if you're going to talk about, let's say,
like realia, you're talking about
reality, real stuff. Yeah.
Pinut CHamoru maagang realia. Most definitely, Hungan, and that's another teaching strategy that engages the students, is being able to see, touch, feel, smell. Yes, Hungan, most definitely. Yes.
And when you are out here on the campus, do you also practice strictly Chamorro with all of the students inside and outside of the classroom? Because of course, repetition is key.
Right,
We have to
and
put
so,
it into
and
practice.
that's a good question. The natural approach to teaching is also very important and significant. It's very essential. So, for example, when a baby is born, right, you don't say, "Oh, look at this bottle, spell bottle, Dilitrea, Dilitrea y palabra. You don't do that, right? You give the baby the bottle and say, Atan, gimen, fanyoto, boka, you know. So I believe that creating a natural approach for these students is also key for them.
Right.
Not so much formal,
Yes,
right?
yes, of course. Plain
And it's a good thing that you
practice.
pointed that out to me, because that's a perfect example. As I see my students in the hallways, they'll say, Hafiday, Senor Camacho. And if they do approach me, hello, you know, husangan siya, mga hello, usay LINGUA'HI. Hafiday, Senora, pues matulay ka, ipalabras niya. Yeah.
All right. Well, Dunklu na Suzos Maasi. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. Each year on Historian E. Islata, we have had the honor of featuring Polly Eric Forbes share his knowledge on the Chamorro language. This year, Polly Eric will fill our ears with flavor.
Every day, all day long, our life is filled with flavor. Today's Chamorro word is one of them, mamis. Mamis means sweet. Everybody loves mamis. Mamis signifies the presence of sugar, our primary source of energy. Not only do we like foods that are mamis, we like people who have a mamis personality. Lovers call each other mamis corazon, literally sweetheart. And isn't there a song that goes, Hago mamis nanana, you sweet mother? And when we need to say something hard for someone else to hear, we say, na mamis ifinomo, make sweet your words. It'll be easier for the other to accept your words when they are mamis. What's the Manamko's favorite wine? Mogen David. Why? Because Mogen David has sugar added to it, making it mamis. And we are a very mamis people because we love mamis things. Mamis, sweet.
Saina Maasi Polly Eric. Moving on with our look at the Chamorro language, we spoke with Senora Rufina Mendiola and Senor Jimmy Teria of GDOE's Chamorro Studies Division to get their take on what is being taught to our children in the classroom. Buenas Zenhafade, Guahu si Jolene Tovis, and you're watching Historian E. Islata. We are here at the beautiful Guam Museum, led by the Department of Chamorro Affairs. Joining me now is Senor Rufina Mendiola and Senor Jimmy Teria. Welcome.
Half a day, Sus Maase, Jolene.
Thank you. Half a day. So today we're talking about the introduction of the Chamorro language to our island's youth.
Yes, and first and foremost, like you mentioned earlier, I'd like to say enhorabuena para el presidente ni Department of Chamorro Affairs ni mauusa esi na lugar, and this is a vibrant place to be at right now, Jolene. The introduction. Yeah, well, currently, since Guahu si Rufina Mendiola, Guahu Administradora, Departamento ng Estudio, Chamorro, Department of Education, and Special Projects. I've been a teacher for over 30 years first.
Wow.
And now taking over as an administrator, we have so many things to talk about. Islata. So the current this is my right-hand person, si Senor Jimmy.
Welcome, Senor. So can you tell us about the Chamorro language in our classrooms? Let's start off with where do you begin even teaching the Chamorro language to many students who are non-speakers or who don't have the ability to practice the application every day?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to say that it started since 1977 as our introduction to the language, and it's right now is in existence into the current mandate program. So yes, where does it begin? It begins with all of us in the home, in the community. So because it's a mandate program, there's so many things behind that program that mandates our teaching into the classroom for the instruction of teaching and learning. And every child, especially in the grades K to 5, it's mandated that they receive 100 minutes for the K to 3 Chamorro a week, but in reality it's like 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day for K to 3. And then for the intermediate level for the 4th and 5th, it's 30 minutes or 150 minutes a week. It's not enough. We need more.
Yes,
We need more time
definitely.
for them.
Definitely. So where do you begin with teaching the language? Where do you start for non-speakers?
Oh, just in the school system.
So basically, in terms of starting a language, just to give you some background again and to touch up on some of the things what Senora mentioned. So this really came about from the Chamorro mandate came out of Public Law 14-53, and so it mandated that Chamorro language would be taught in the classrooms of Guam, and then it was further expanded by several other legislations, and then the most recent one is 3145, which mandates Chamorro education from kindergarten to 10th grade. And so that's just a backdrop of how long we've been
In
incorporating
existence.
in Chamorro. And so where does one begin? As a teacher of 10 years and as a teacher at the university, also as a teacher in the community, and basically with my own children, yes, it does begin with home, but the Department of Education and the Chamorro Studies Division definitely support Chamorro language programs. And so the beginnings would be your everyday expressions, at least from my experience, and then of course building the capacity of students in terms of vocabulary, sentence construction, and then hopefully through the exposure of natural settings and immersion settings, the child is able to grasp deeper concepts. So those are some of the most effective ways of incorporating language and language delivery.
And it begins with the people that already speaks a language. So we all know that the speakers are 55 years and above. But now I believe that has changed also in time, because we have a place in Guam called Hurrah. And right now we're producing speakers with this nanny. And you will be amazed of how they speak and carry on a conversation. So we also provide professional development, and of course we'll talk about later on about how we provide professional development and the curriculum of instruction to be used in the classroom in the speaking and teaching of the Chamorro language.
Now you mentioned that speakers, there are more younger speakers nowadays. You know, it was the common conception that the Chamorro language was dying as our generations, you know, as we continue along in our generations, because like you mentioned, 55 years and older, those are our speakers. So those are grandparents, but then the parents themselves of the children are not fluent, or they only understand and they don't utilize. So how important is it to maintain and pass down our Chamorro language to the generations to come?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's
Chris.
definitely important. One of my mentors, the great Samuel Batanzas, spoke that language is the umbilical cord to culture. And without language, it would be very difficult to pass on culture. And it is the only connection that we have to our ancestors that have been here for 4,000 years. So definitely, and it's the world view. What really happens is that when we don't see the world in a Chamorro lens, when we don't experience authentic culture through our own language, it's difficult, because sometimes we become, our identities are not complete without our language. So I really believe that in order for language to thrive, we definitely need a new generation of speakers. She mentioned that, and that's the mild fluent speakers over 55. If you want like real fluent speakers, they're over the age of 75.
All right.
I mean,
And we don't
so-
really have them, yes.
so the gaps are really shortening up, and we have to
Yeah.
really produce younger speakers.
And for myself, it will definitely not die. As long as your heart is beating, that's your language. For us that speaks the language, that's the only thing we need to provide
Yes.
into our next generation is to speak it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. After this break, we'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Historian Islata. Join us every Monday in March right here on this station to learn more about Guam, her history, her people, and of course, her Chamorro language. Biba Guam, Biba Chamorro.